Good morning, Clara. Good morning, everybody. I have a short paper to deliver. This paper is about domain-specific machine learning in the humanities. I try to connect what's been done by the speakers before me, and I go into the issue, what is domain-specific machine learning? It's simple. It's not machine learning for everything. It's machine learning for certain domains. And please remember that if world medical scientists were able to find out within 12 months a viable vaccine against COVID, that was in great part due to machine learning. Because in order to find out which proteins were able to interact with the principle of the COVID, it has been necessary to use machine learning in such a way that millions and millions of proteins were bent, protein bending, that's the name of the procedure, in order to interact with the principle of the vaccine. So without machine learning, without teaching the machine to train the data they have in order to do exactly what they are expected to do, we wouldn't have found anything, any vaccine so soon. That is, we would have used other methods, so it takes more time. So in this sense, artificial intelligence was instrumental in fighting COVID, and it will instrumental again in very many other domains, let's say. So we're not talking about artificial intelligence for everything. We are talking about artificial intelligence for certain domains. Now, I am an historian of philosophy, and I obviously try to tackle the challenge of how much and how can we use artificial intelligence in the history of philosophy. So, history of philosophy being based on texts. So we have very long traditions of texts. So we have also very large corpora of texts. So you have the corpora of Greek philosophy, you have the corpora of medieval philosophy, we have corpora in Chinese philosophy. So we have corpora. A corpora means 10 million, 1.5 million. It's a lot of data which we divide because they've been put together by scholars over the centuries. But anyway, this to say that also in the history of philosophy, we have material for large language models. That is, we have great corporas, and we can interact with the data in such a way that the data respond. We have, let's say, we have had already important application of the so-called digital humanity in the history of philosophy. Actually, this is a process that has started right after World War II. As you remember, even before the revolution initiated by Alan Turing with the binary calculus in 1915, the idea of the lock cards that was started by IBM in the US and by Siemens in Germany, and perhaps you know this was instrumental also in finding out who were German citizens or even Jewish citizens in the occupied territories. And so also before Turing, it was possible to sample texts, put them into a machine, and have the machine produce concordances. The first attempt in this direction was conducted by Jesuit father Roberto Busa, who put into his very rudimentary computers, but still computers, his index domesticum. It's masculine. Index domesticus, and it was followed by the National Research Council of Italy, who started the Instituto per il Lessico Intellettuale Europeo. It was founded in 1964, and this is a very pioneering institute because it also worked on the approach started by Busa of having machinery elaboration of Textdatenverarbeitung, elektronische Textverarbeitung in German. And so we have had much of this before, but now, obviously today we have more. But let me say this, I was in charge of the Institut per Lexicon Europeo, and so I appropriated the methodology of this institute, and the methodology is, in one sentence, that we find in Montaigne. The sentence is, "Qu'on définisse rien." That is, we should not define anything. We should go and look and see what happens. So the idea "qu'on définisse rien" was, let's say, brought against idealistic, metaphysical, speculative interpretation of texts that belong to the history of philosophy. The main example of idealistic, speculative interpretation of the history of philosophy is the works on the history of philosophy provided by Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, and in Italy, later, about 100 years after Hegel, by Giovanni Gentile and Benedetto Croce. In 1960, we wanted to go against this, and we adopted what we may call an empirical approach. This empirical approach has been started by other Italian philosophers, of whose work we are very proud of. I can quote Antonio Banfi, Eugenio Guérin, Pietro Piovani, and again, Tullio Gregori and Tullio De Mauro. So we have an empirical stance. Now, if we have an empirical stance, it means that what we do in the history of philosophy can be verified. That is, that we are bound to prove that the outcomes we have found through the machine can be shared on the basis of the data that are produced. There has been a very important book on this by my distinguished colleague and friend Paolo Galluzzi in Florence, who analyzed Galileo. And while analyzing Galileo, he found one word, momentum, momento, and he proved in the sense it's verifiable that this happened. He proved that momentum in Galileo has 7 different meanings, and so that the word has been used in different contexts with different meanings and with important meaning shifts, which were instrumental for developing Galileo's thought on physics and on philosophy. So the idea is even historians of philosophy must prove themselves able to share data and have data verified. So this is what we have become aware of, and this is where we want to point when we look into the interaction of history of philosophy and artificial intelligence. Now, we know that current large language models can provide self-supervised research. That is, we don't need a human being to look at every line. We need the machine to look at every line and tell us what they found, what it finds. And this is an important step because as for protein bending, humans cannot do everything. So we have a case studies. We started actually from a case study, which we found the most difficult and hence the most interesting. This case study has been Kant's translations into Chinese. And we have started with the work of one doctoral student. I'm proud to mention him, Timon Gatta of Sapienza University, a student of my distinguished colleague Federico Mazzini. And Timon started as a human to look at the German text and its Chinese translations over 100 years, because the first Chinese translation of Kant goes back to 1930. This Timon did with his hands, manually. Now we are aligning the German text with the Chinese translations. And what happens is that some of the hypotheses of Timon are verified, and many others come about. And so now what Timon is doing is checking the answers that the machine is giving to him. So this is the next step. It's not only what a human can do on one's own, putting so many months of work. It's what the machine gives and what humans do with what the machine is given. So the machine works self-supervised, but humans must interact with the machine in such a way that the outcomes are a dialogue which is then offered to the public, to the communities, for further research. And let me conclude stressing the importance of this new branch of research activities that dates back not long, actually. The first roadmap for European research infrastructures goes back to the early 2000s, so 2006. But now the European Union has started a very importantly financed program called Research Infrastructures. And of these, about 60 research infrastructures, 10 or 9, let's say, it depends on the life cycles of the infrastructures, but they say 9 infrastructures are entirely devoted to the humanities. And I don't quote everything, but let me quote only 3. CLARIN, the infrastructure for common language; DARIAH, the infrastructure for the arts and humanities; and ERIHS, the infrastructure for open science publishing in the humanities. These 3 infrastructures become the place in which data are shared. That is, data are not easy to handle, so we need repositories. In the infrastructures hold repositories available for scholars who confer data and retrieve data. So this is how, let me conclude saying, this is what we have to do in the next let's say, 6 years that separate us from 2030, which apparently is a very big moment of accounting, producing. But this interaction of scholars, machine learning, data, and repositories, this is what will define the landscape of research in the next, let's say, 6 years. And so we need to become aware of this. We need to make the best of this. We need to keep our mind free from prejudice and open to discussion. It's a long way, but we are very happy that, say, we are riding the wave. We are riding the wave of generative pre-trained transformers, as they're called, and we are keeping our approach steady, and we are happy about the results we get. So this is what I had to tell today, dear Clara, dear public, and good luck and best wishes to everybody. Thank you.